I want to thank everybody for being with us here today, and I especially want to thank all the people who are behind me representing all the different agencies in the state of Texas. Obviously, we have a very substantial winter storm coming into Texas over the next few days that will be in the state of Texas for the remainder of the week. We want to make sure that our fellow Texans know exactly what is coming, what to expect. We want them to know what Texas has been doing for basically an entire year now to be prepared for this storm, in addition to steps that have been taken over the past week or two, as well as what we will be doing over the course of the remainder of the week. One of the most important things that we can do today and every day going forward is to make sure that we are remaining in close communication with everybody across the state to update you on exactly what is happening, what to expect, and how to respond. First, I want you to know that we're utilizing every applicable state agency to make sure that Texas will robustly respond to this extreme cold winter storm that is going to be sweeping across Texas. It includes the Texas Division of Emergency Management, the Texas A&M Forest Service, the Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, and Texas A&M Texas Task Force 1. That includes Texas A&M AgriLife, the Public Utilities Commission, Railroad Commission, Energy Reliability Council of Texas, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the Texas Department of Transportation, the Texas Military Department, Texas National Guard, Texas Parks and Wildlife, Texas Department of Public Safety, and the Texas Department of State Health Services. Let me run through top lines of what some of these agencies are working on, and then some of the agency heads or people with those agencies will be telling you more about what they are doing. First, the Public Utilities Commission. They've held meetings with utilities on winter preparations, and that is in the aftermath of a multi-month long process where they have been inspecting all of the power generators in the entire state of Texas, and at least 99%, if not more, of the power generators in the state of Texas have passed inspection or are fully operational. The PUC, will provide staff 24/7 for the State Operations Center, and provide updates about utility and electric outages across the state. Importantly, and the head of the PUC will explain more about this, but they are already bringing more generation online sooner than what happened last year. They have additional crews already deployed, and Peter Lake, the head of the PUC, will be explaining more about this. But he will be explaining the process and concept of power outages that could occur across the state. Understanding this important structure for the Texas power grid system. The Texas power grid is operated by ERCOT. They have the capability of providing a certain amount of megawatt power across the entire state during any given day. During any given day, there are reasons why there may be power outages that have nothing to do with the power grid whatsoever. This moment is an example of that. At this moment, Texas has an excess of 15,000 megawatts of power available for people across the entire state. That said, there are almost 5,000 Texans without power right now. That same concept may happen during the course of this particular winter storm, and there are a variety of reasons why people may lose power. It could be that power lines are down, power lines by the company that customers enter into contracts with. Those power lines could go down because a tree falls on the power lines, and the power lines are no longer able at that particular time to deliver power to a home. That's what those transmission companies that deliver power to your house, it's their job to make sure that they get those power lines back up and running again. The same thing could happen during a winter storm. It could be either ice on power lines that would cause a power line to go down, or it could be ice on trees that causes a tree to fall and on power lines and cause the power line to go down. That doesn't mean that there are challenges with the power grid in the state of Texas. It means that for a short period of time, a particular neighborhood may be without power. But know that your local power company that you have contracted with is working to make sure that power will be restored quickly, even though there may not be a problem with the Texas power grid itself. ERCOT, and the head of ERCOT will tell you more about this shortly, but last Friday ERCOT issued an operating condition notice for forecast cold weather starting tomorrow. Yesterday, the forecast for electricity demand showed demand for electricity that may have been less than some earlier forecast. The change in forecast is driven by things like changing weather predictions. And as the weather forecasts become more clear, so will the predictions for the amount of electricity demand. ERCOT has not yet requested enforcement discretion from TCEQ or the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, though they are prepared to do so as the week progresses if the need arises. And ERCOT is using a conservative approach to grid management and forecast to make sure that they are prepared. It's our understanding, as we discussed just moments before coming out here, that the time during the course of this winter storm when we are expecting the highest demand for power from the power grid is going to be on Friday morning. Today, right now, the prognostication is that ERCOT will have an excess of 15,000 megawatts of power available even at the time of highest demand. So ERCOT is well prepared for conditions as they currently stand, but remains flexible in order to be able to be responsive to power demand needs. The Railroad Commission, and again, Jim Wright of the Railroad Commission will tell you more, but top line, the Railroad Commission conducted operational calls with local gas distribution companies, major gas producers, and pipeline operators throughout the state yesterday. All are prepared for any potential inclement weather and do not anticipate any significant operational challenges. The Railroad Commission has inspected intrastate underground natural gas storage facilities, and they also are anticipating no weather-related limitations. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They have deployed their emergency management support team, their disaster response strike teams, and emergency response hazmat contractors. They're all on standby to assist local governments with any air, water, or waste-related issues, including drinking water, wastewater issues, and emergency response activities. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has notified public drinking water and wastewater systems about steps to take in advance of approaching winter weather. They also are working with ERCOT on TCEQ's power emergency procedures, especially as they could apply to power generators. A work group has been created to screen emissions reports for cold weather-related conditions. TCEQ also has contacted EPA Region 6 to begin coordination of any possible response activities and response requests. The Texas Department of Transportation is highly engaged and will play a pivotal role in maintaining public safety over the course of this winter storm. First, to explain the important role of Texas Department of Transportation, we are expecting, beginning here in about 12 or 18 hours, not only cold coming in on the north side of Texas in the Panhandle region, but also precipitation. Some of it will be snow, some of it will be sleet, some of it will be freezing rain, some of it will be rain that will freeze on roadways. And that over the coming days will continue to come across the state of Texas. There will be thousands upon thousands of miles of roads that will be extraordinarily dangerous. One of the most important things we can convey to our fellow Texans today is that over the coming few days, the roadways could become very treacherous. As precipitation falls on these roadways, in addition to black ice, which is hard to see and even more difficult to navigate, there will be other road conditions that could put your life in danger if you use those roadways. So we urge our fellow Texans to proceed with great caution as you choose to travel about your region, knowing that different regions will be facing different challenges on roadways. So with that said, TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation, have already deployed 4,000 personnel to assist in this process. All 25 Texas Department of Transportation districts are engaged in winter weather preparations and have crews that are working 24/7. Pre-treatment of roads began this past Sunday. Districts that received rain yesterday will have pre-treatment beginning today. Materials have been replenished since last winter, and the strategic salt reserve is full. Beginning today, TxDOT will have daily calls with their districts and divisions to determine specific needs and to provide updates to the State Operations Center right here. TxDOT will shift resources as weather conditions also shift. For the public, again, we strongly urge you to go to a website location where you can learn more about road conditions. That website is drivetexas.org, drivetexas.org, where you can learn in advance before you go out what the driving conditions look like where you may be driving around. Next is the Texas Division of Emergency Management that will tell you more later. But today they hosted a statewide weather briefing for jurisdictions across the state to discuss life safety updates. These calls will continue daily throughout this entire winter event. This afternoon, the Texas Division of Emergency Management will host the Energy Industry Coordination Call to handle industry resource requests. These also will continue on a daily basis throughout the time period of this winter event. In addition to that, the Texas Division of Emergency Management is working to ensure that water and food are stationed in regions across the state that will be affected by the winter storm. Warehouses are stocked with blankets, cots, water, ice chests, air beds, medical cots, and additional supplies. As local partners open warming centers, those locations will be posted on the TDM's website. That website location is www.tdem.texas.gov. Again, for things like blankets, cots, water, ice chests, air beds, and other things, especially warming centers, you can go to www.tdem.texas.gov. Next is the Texas Military Division. They have already engaged 130 personnel and 50 vehicles rostered and will add more as needed. They have 5 winter weather mission ready packages staged in Abilene, Wichita Falls, Lubbock, Brownwood, and Round Rock. Those packages include winter weather packages comprised of 18 personnel, Humvees, wreckers, and field ambulances. Team D has rostered a command and control package in Waco. They are also supporting the State Operations Center Logistics Branch as well as the military desk. The Texas A&M Forest Service is prepared to assist local agencies, including the Texas Division of Emergency Management and TxDOT, with winter weather support. They are currently assigned to support TxDOT in the Amarillo, Brownwood districts and have additional resources available across the West Texas region and the Panhandle region. Among other things, they have saw teams ready to help with fallen trees, which again is the kind of thing that we expect when we see the type of icing event that we will experience. The Texas Parks and Wildlife, game wardens and park police officers are on standby statewide to assist in any area affected by winter weather. The Texas Department of Public Safety, the same. These are the state law enforcement, and among other things, they will be also working to ensure roadway safety across the entire regions of the state of Texas, which is most of the state, that will be affected by this winter storm. And the Department of State Health Services, they are coordinating with hospital preparedness providers on resource needs and requirements for hospitals including reporting of facility issues, things that could arise, such as power outages, water issues, medical surge staff, or overnight lodging requirements. The Department of State Health Services is coordinating the Texas Emergency Medical Task Force resources to support winter weather response needs. They are also coordinating with the Texas Health and Human Services Commission on plans for any potential emergency evacuation of state-supported living centers or other similar facilities. They also wanted me to make sure that the public remained aware about something that can happen during a winter storm, and that is carbon monoxide poisoning. So please be aware of and follow all advice to make sure that over the course of the winter storm, you avoid the potential for carbon monoxide poisoning. DSHS stands ready to assist in that regard. Now, I'm going to have the other folks who are sitting at the table with me provide additional information from their particular divisions, including initially Chief Nimkid, Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Governor. As you mentioned, the Emergency Management Council is ready. This morning on our call, we had over 1,000 local jurisdiction lines calling in. I just want to highlight one, the city of Corpus Christi. Made sure that we knew that they have warming centers that are open. They'll be posting them on their website. Their focus is on the homeless in that community. They will give free transportation to their warming centers. They've increased services for animal care and increased communication with their community and their local media. That's the kind of example of a great jurisdiction that we hope all jurisdictions in Texas are doing right now. Our message to citizens is pay attention to your local forecast and pay attention to your local officials. The governor mentioned our website, tdem.texas.gov. That's where we will post the location of all of the warming centers that the local officials share with us, as well as we will re-implement the plumber's locator app in partnership with the Board of Plumbing Examiners. As we know, as winter storms come, pipes can freeze. We want to be ahead of that. I also want to remind people about the 4 Ps. People, pets, pipes, and plants. We need to be taking action now to protect those in our homes. This is going to be a very cold event, and the wind chills could be deadly. We want to make sure that anybody that's in the way has a warm place to go. And as you'll hear more about, we cannot overemphasize, driving conditions will be treacherous. If you do not have to get out and drive when the roads are iced over, please do not do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Director Steve Mccraw with the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Governor. Obviously, your overriding priority is preservation of life. And anytime we have these events, there's at a time that's worse for a Texas State Trooper or for a TxDOT employee than these icy road conditions. If you don't have to be out there, just like Chief Kidd said, don't be out there. Like the governor said, don't get out there. There's no one skilled enough to drive an automobile at highway speed in icy conditions, period. And the last thing we need to do is lose life on the roadway. So we've got 330,000 miles of the roadway in Texas, so please be safe, stay off the roadways. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Mark Williams with the Texas Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Governor. Throughout this week, crews across the state have been active in preparing for this oncoming winter weather. That is included making sure that our supplies are stocked up, our equipment is ready, and that we've been beginning our pre-treatment operations on our roads statewide. We have district personnel that have been deployed to areas where we think that there'll be greater impact, such as North Texas. All told, we have about 4,000 personnel engaged, about 2,400 pieces of equipment that are part of this effort. Some of the key messages, though, that we have and that we're pushing out through our message boards and trying to get out to the motorists, as has been emphasized. We expect that the conditions that we will see will make for very hazardous driving conditions. And that despite efforts with pre-treatment, we cannot guarantee 100% that roads won't have unsafe conditions on them. And so it's very important that motorists be aware of those road conditions, drive to those road conditions, slow down, and if you do not have to get out when the roads are icy or snow covered, please don't. Something else that's also very important that we're trying to get out to motorists is, as has been noted, our personnel are actively engaged in pre-treating our roadways statewide, and they're going to be actively engaged in responding when winter weather precipitation may begin to accumulate on those roads. We ask that motorists give our operators room to do their job and to help keep us safe while we're doing our best to keep you all safe. Lastly, as the governor emphasized, our road conditions are publicized and made available on drivetexas.org, and so we would encourage both motorists, citizens, and the media to be familiar with that site, because that's the most up-to-date information that we can push out to let you all know what those road conditions look like. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Next is the Public Utility Commission Chair, Peter Lee.
Thank you, Governor. As you said, we know that the reforms we have put in place over these last few months ensure that our grid is reliable and ready for this winter weather event. We will continue operating the grid in a conservative fashion by bringing on more reserves for an increased margin of safety and by operating an abundance of caution so that we have more supply sooner rather than later. In addition, our grid and our transmission system now meet and exceed federal winterization standards. Those power plants and transmission infrastructure have been inspected by ERCOT and found to be within near universal compliance. In addition, we've worked with the Railroad Commission to identify natural gas critical infrastructure to ensure that during any emergency conditions, natural gas will continue to flow to our power generators. In addition, we've made our industrial demand response program more accessible and available sooner as another measure of redundancy and reliability in our system. Most recently, in the last week or so, we have worked with our generators to ensure that any maintenance was conducted preemptively so that all resources available will be ready to operate during this weather event. Our generating fleet has procured extra fuel, both coal, gas, diesel, and fuel oil on site at the generators, and crews have been pre-positioned and will be pre-positioned at generators to ensure any problems that arise can be quickly addressed. Our transmission system also is pre-positioning crews to ensure that any of the ice-related incidents that we might expect, including falling branches or lines that are overly burdened with ice, can be addressed quickly. Some of our transmission companies have mobile generators ready to fill the gaps in any areas of local outages. And finally, I do want to remind everyone that, as the governor said, squirrels, tree branches, ice on wires are local issues that can be addressed by your local transmission company. Contact information for those transmission companies can be found on the PUC website, puc.texas.gov.
Thank you. Next is the head of ERCOT, Brad Jones.
Thank you, Governor. As the chairman said, we've been working for the last year to make sure that this grid is more reliable than it ever has been in the past. And it is. We've taken a number of actions to make sure that our generators are ready, that our transmission system is ready. And they have responded. They've responded, and as the chairman just said a moment ago, they have passed the inspections that we've gone out and tested them on. So we feel very comfortable at their level of readiness. In addition to that, we have been working to improve communications, and we're working daily in daily calls to talk to all of the communicators across the industry to make sure that during this storm you get one message from the folks in the industry and not several. We are ready for this storm. We'll be prepared for this. We have about 71,000 megawatts of expected load, which will be a record for ERCOT during the winter. 71,000 megawatts of load, but at the same time we have 86,000 megawatts. Country, over 10,000 megawatts of wind that we're getting out of the western part of the country for both Thursday and Friday. We'll be ready and ready to answer questions.
Thank you very much. And next, Railroad Commissioner Wright.
Thank you, Governor. The Railroad Commission has been closely monitoring the weather forecast for this week, similar to what we did for the last two storms that we saw earlier this month. We sent out notice to operators yesterday on the weather projections later this week, on what we expect for later this week. We also had multiple conference calls with pipeline operators, natural gas utilities, and major producers yesterday, and continue to do so. They reported that they are prepared and don't expect significant disruptions from the freeze. But we'll keep in contact with them to get updates along with what our staff is doing here at the SOC Center. It is important to remember that gas must be processed into dry gas before it can be used for power generation and home heating. As of mid-January, Texas still has more than 380 billion cubic feet of dry working gas in underground storage, and another 30 to 35 billion cubic feet is typically in pipelines at any given time. This far exceeds the peak daily demand for home heating and gas-fired power generators. Unlike gas in pipelines and storage facilities, gas produced from the wells still need to be processed before it can be used for home heating or power generation purposes. Real-time production by nature can fluctuate throughout the day from hour to hour due to a variety of reasons, such as scheduled maintenance and downtime for safety reasons. Average statewide daily production can vary as much as more than 2 billion cubic feet per day, even during non-winter time periods. But this means the vast majority of gas production, more than 90%, stays online. Finally, the Railroad Commission has mobilized more than 200 of our inspectors since last fall to get a first-hand look at winterization at natural gas facilities, including all underground storages in the state and critical pipelines serving power generators. Inspectors have visited more than 4,000 facilities so far. About 98% of those facilities visited have been winterized. The remaining 2% or so were in the process of winterizing at the time the inspections were occurred. RRC visited them in the last few months. Our inspectors are visiting more facilities as we speak and will continue to do so throughout this winter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seth will take a few questions.
All right, Maggie.
Hey there, Governor. You had mentioned earlier the Texas Energy Reliability Council, which was part of the legislation that was passed to reform the grid. I know that group has met several times, but all behind closed doors. Can you commit to maybe having a few of those meetings open to the public or live streamed like the PUC and ERCOT meetings are?
Was that to me or to Peter Lake?
I guess to all of you collectively, do you think we can have better communication from how those meetings are going with all characters involved in those meetings?
So I'm going to take the first shot at providing you a level of communication. Chief Kidd will provide additional information. Peter Lake may also. But listen, obviously, we want to achieve greater transparency to make sure the public knows what's going on. Sometimes there's various reasons why things have to be decided without the public being involved. I can't tell you what all those different scenarios are because I am not present during those times. But I just want you to know and the public to know that our goal is to achieve the greatest level of transparency. We know that the more the public knows about what's going on, the more trust and confidence they will have in the process. We want to earn that trust and confidence. Chief Kidd?
Thank you, Governor. And Maggie, that's a very important question. Thanks for asking that. Listen, you know by the legislation I chair the Texas Energy Reliability Council. You also know by legislation that the legislature put in place certain safeguards or parameters for public meetings and open records. And I believe the reason for that was to get these industries that don't usually work together, that need to work together, to be able to communicate. I hope what you will see and what the community will see is the actions of Turk are evident here today. Look at the level of communication between these agencies that we really didn't have a purview into before. I can also commit that the legislature mandated a report to them in November. And so before November, you will see public documentation and things that go into the public about the actions, the efforts, and the outcomes. And I can tell you to this point, the members of Turk, the 5 state agencies and the 19 appointees have been working day in and day out together. We've had face-to-face meetings several times a month, and several of them have broken into work groups that are meeting weekly now in order to really do what the legislation says, foster communication between the energy and the electric utilities in Texas.
Thank you. All right, Freeman.
You mentioned there were 5,000 people without electricity now. How long do you expect them to be without electricity since we're about to start filling the
So those who are currently without power, they're without power for reasons unrelated to the power grid. On the map that I looked at, I couldn't tell exactly where they were located. I did hear some reports that some occurred in the Houston area, I think yesterday. They may have been related to weather events unrelated to a winter storm that occurred in Houston yesterday. Having lived in Houston myself, I can tell you there's oftentimes a lot of trees that fall on power lines, and that is commonly the reason why power is down. Can't confirm that right now, but that would be a reasonable explanation for why some people may be without power. CenterPoint typically is the power company involved in providing power in the Houston area, and I know that they work around the clock to restore that power as quickly as possible. Seth?
Governor Abbott and Chief Kidd, what is your metric of success when you say that if our grid will be reliable? Is it no blackouts or no load shed, or is it no catastrophic blackout?
Listen, the goal obviously is through the course of any winter storm or in the course of any everyday event to make sure that the lights stay on, the power stays on, and we have a team who literally has been working around the clock with the PUC, with ERCOT, with the Texas Division of Emergency Management and others, who are working to ensure that goal is going to be achieved.
So does that mean if there are any load shed events, then it wouldn't be a success, or it would?
Well, listen, no one can guarantee that there won't be a, quote, load shed event. But what we will work and strive to achieve, and what we're prepared to achieve, is that the power is going to stay on across the entire state.
I have a question for Commissioner Wright. I know there's a lot of concern about natural gas production and weatherization standards. Can you shed any insight into what those weatherization standards are that those facilities you mentioned that are winterized have met, and also what threshold would be for percentage of natural gas facilities that would have to go offline for people to start seeing their power go out?
Certainly. I've been very proud to see that industry this year has introduced lots of different ways of trying to make sure that nothing freezes up at a wellhead or at a gas transmission facility or storage by introducing methanol, heating blankets, heat tracing lines. There's all sorts of different things that they're doing. As far as gas that could come offline, I think your question was from last year, or is that what you think we're going to predict for this year? Was that your question?
There was a recent freeze that caused a significant percentage of natural gas facilities to go offline, and so I think people are concerned that there hasn't been enough time between the event a few weeks ago and now to bring meaningful remedies to be implemented.
Yeah, what you saw at the first of the year in some of the reports that were out in the media was pretty standard for what we experience on a day-to-day basis in the natural gas industry. We have fluctuations in production of gas every day. Those were not out of anything normal. In fact, in January 20th, I believe, we were producing more gas than we have in the past 2 years. And that was one of the days that we had one of the rather colder days in January.
Hey, I was hoping to ask a question of TxDOT and then whoever else would like to take an answer at it. But I wanted to know, obviously in North Texas, ahead of the winter storm a couple days, it was on a toll road, but we had a deadly pileup crash that happened with crazy rain, etc. So I was wondering more generally, are there any lessons learned or precautions that y'all are taking since the winter storm last year to better prepare our roads for winter weather and make sure they're safe, they're safe?
Thank you. Thanks for that question. First and foremost, I want to reiterate that despite all of the precautions we take and the efforts that we make, this type of weather event is not going to be a weather event that we can guarantee that the roads are going to be safe. We're expecting icing and snowing, and particularly ice is a very dangerous, very treacherous set of conditions for motorists to deal with on our roadways. And so we don't want to give anybody a false sense of security that you're not going to encounter hazardous conditions if you get out during this type of event. That being said, anytime we go through an event, we redouble our efforts to look at what we're doing. We're taking steps to do additional pre-treatment in areas where we think that there could be an additional amount of ice accumulation. And we're working with a number of agencies, particularly in these urban areas. We work in partnership with the cities and the counties through our traffic management centers to really work as a team to address these conditions. And we have had that engagement with all of those agencies, not only in preparation of this event, but in anticipation as we've moved into the winter season on how we can do as effective job as possible in addressing our road conditions.
I'm sorry, thank you so much. In terms of your focus for that pre-treatment that you mentioned, are we focusing on brine solution? Are we focusing on actual rock salt, sand, or is this a particular area of the state? What's the strategy there?
Right. The the pretreatment occurs with a brine solution that's laid down before the winter weather event comes on. And we also keep an eye to when we may have precipitation rain in advance of that, and if we're able to go back and reapply that brine solution, because sometimes if there is a rain event that precedes this weather, which we expect, some of that brine solution gets worked off. So it's a constant effort to continue to make sure that we're doing our very best to pre-treat roads, realizing again that they can't be 100% safe. There's going to be risks out there when we encounter this type of weather event.
All right, Melanie, and then two more.
And Governor Abbott, we've heard what was said here today about natural gas supply. Still, do you regret not calling an additional special session to require natural gas supply to be winterized ahead of this storm? Would that have benefited Texans?
When you hear what the Railroad Commission has done, is they've taken steps to ensure that we're going to have the natural gas that we need. Let me walk you through a couple of things about both what happened last winter storm and what was done this time to make sure we wouldn't have a repeat of that as it concerns natural gas. In the last winter storm, there were many aspects of the natural gas production, gathering, and processing that actually got shut down by ERCOT when they shut down power to those locations. As a result, a lot of the natural gas that could have been produced or processed to be transported, they were unable to do so because they did not have the power to do so. Since that time, the numbers are amazing. Last winter, there were only 60 facilities in Texas that were designated as critical infrastructure. Now there are more than 1,500 facilities designated as critical infrastructure. Many of those are these natural gas facilities. My point is that a lot of what happened last year has been corrected by that critical infrastructure component. Separate from that, let me explain two things that are very important. One thing, or maybe both things that were mentioned by Commissioner Wright. One is that Texas produces far more natural gas on a daily basis than what we need to be able to respond to this winter storm. There may be some reduction in the power, in the generation of natural gas. We can still ensure power grid integrity, even if there is a loss of some level of production of natural gas. Even that said, when you look at the amount of natural gas that we have in storage this day, we have multiple days worth of natural gas in storage so that we would be able to quickly deploy that in regions across the state of Texas to make sure that there will be no shortage of natural gas for generation purposes.
Brett Ship of Spectrum News. Brad, quick question for you. Are you aware of any megawatts that have been pulled offline going into this weekend storm? Are you aware of any megawatts that have been pulled offline?
So we are aware that there are some limitations on the gas system around the city of Dallas. We've experienced that in the past. We've got great communications with the company that serves that area. They've let us know of those restrictions. So we're making sure that those assets that have been impacted are moving over to alternate fuels. Many of them have on site, and some have alternate pipelines that can serve them as well.
Okay, do we know how many megawatts that equates to?
Total, we're expecting that to be around 1,200 at the low end and 2,600 at the high end.
Okay, and real quick, Railroad Commission, you're saying that 98% of the gas production facilities and transmission lines have been winterized. Are you confident?
I'm saying that they've taken steps for more winterization than they've had in the past.
Tell me more
our
what that
inspections.
means.
That means just what I had said earlier, that we've introduced ways of not having things freeze up, like methanol, heating blankets, heat tracing lines, those kinds of things.
You've introduced, does that mean they have implemented?
Yes, sir. We're seeing more and more of that being
But they
implemented.
have, you don't know that they have fully winterized and are ready for this weekend?
We feel comfortable that they are ready for this weekend, yes, sir.
So if I can elaborate on, we lost it. So when you talked about introduced, I want to make sure you know this, and that is one thing that they are using in abundance as far as the number of facilities out there concerned is the injection of methanol. And the reason, nodding that you know that, I don't know if the others know what that means, but by using that will prevent the freezing. Oil and gas themselves are elements that typically would not freeze based upon the temperatures we will be experiencing. However, water can sometimes get into the facilities. The injection of methanol will pretty much eliminate that water that could cause freezing to make sure that those facilities will not freeze. In addition to things like making them critical infrastructure, they are commonly using methanol to make sure that that will be an additional measure to make sure their facilities will not freeze.
Chairman Lake, or for either, you guys added, I think it was 15% capacity with heater plants going into the winter. Do you have to use that at all, and do you expect to have to use that this weekend?
The particular resources change on any given day based on price point and availability. So yes, they've been used at some point, some days, and geographic location, where there may be constraints on transmission at any given point. So our entire fleet that is available to be dispatched is dispatched according to the protocols that are got.
All right, thank you.
Listen, thank y'all very much. We urge our fellow Texans to be very safe over the coming days. Just know that this team will be working around the clock to make sure that we are gathering the information needed to share with you so that you will be best prepared to do what you need to do to protect your family, to protect your homes, to protect your lives. Take care and be safe.